Ever get the feeling there's a war going on?
There's always a war going on. War is the world's favorite spectator sport. Give me some more skin sutures.
It's about time you showed up, Fox. You're the only hope for our world.
So recently I watched A Fox in Space, and it's got me thinking. Usually when you beat a level of Starfox, it'll tell you how many enemies you downed in that area, and then ultimately across the whole game, just so you know, like, how well you did in that run versus your next run. But they never actually make much differentiation between, like, what counts as downing an enemy. Like, if they were actually being piloted by other, like, people, if they were monsters, if they were robots, if they were, like, you know, some weird sort of space debris thing. So, I'm going to try and determine in this video here, how many people does Fox McCloud kill in a regular run of Star Fox 64? Now, by regular run, I just mean I sat down and I hashed out a pretty basic playthrough of Star Fox 64. I took the right route the whole time. I've not played this game since I was a little kid, honestly, so I'm a little rusty on it. This is not a perfect run. This is not a genocide run. This is not an all-hit playthrough. This is just me playing through it and beating it. Pretty much nothing extra on it. Pretty basic route and everything. So if you want to try and pick this up and see what the perfect kill count would be, you're welcome to. Now, every run starts in Corneria. By my research, which wasn't super intensive, so feel free to shoot me down in the comments if you'd like. But by my research, generally pilots have a pretty good likelihood nowadays of surviving a plane crash if they can hit their eject button. But that's complicated by a few things. That generally assumes that they're going down due to, like, engine problems or other technical difficulties. Dogfights are a bit different. Supposedly, during the Gulf War, data on U.S. air losses had that of 23 shootdowns of light craft, about 12 pilots and crew were killed. So if we assume that's just, 12 out of 23 here, we're looking at about a 50-50 chance of dying if you get shot down. Now, the lower your altitude is, I believe the less likely you are to make it out. Corneria is a very low altitude environment, but I'm going to assume that's mostly representative, just to make it a little more intense. So we'll say about a 50-50 on the pilots surviving versus dying. Now, the trick here, though, is going to be figuring out which of these machines are actually piloted by a person and which one of them are autonomous. I'm going to have to do this just bit by bit for each level. My general rule of thumb is going to be that if it moves, it probably has a pilot, like an R-Wing. And if it's stationary, I'll go ahead and graciously assume that it's automated. And then, obviously, I'm not going to count monsters. Those aren't people. They're alive, but they aren't people. And anything that's just, like, obviously just a missile coming at you that you shoot out, I'm going to assume that's not being manned, because that would be fucking insane, although a little awesome. Now, what's kind of interesting is that the strategy guide calls a lot of these enemies robots, but I'm sort of a mind that if these were automated, then there's, like, no reason for Fox and company to be in the R-Wings. This game wasn't made with, like, ideas of, like, AI or drones or, like, remote pilots being a thing, really. So, in my mind, if it's moving and it's, like, doing complicated motions, it has a pilot. It's a mech. Because especially when you get to the end of the level, there's a giant robot that is absolutely being piloted by a guy, right? So, I'm just going to say that, for the most part, if it's doing complicated movements, even if they call it a robot, it's a mech. So, with all that logic out of the way here, by my count, I shot down in Corneria about 33 enemies that probably had a pilot. Now, a lot of these might have actually had more than one pilot. We actually don't know how many people it takes to run, for example, these big, like, destruction bots. So it could be higher than this. I don't know if any of these have ejects, actually. When the Starfox team goes down, there's no indication they eject. It sounds more like they just run away. But we're just going to generously assume these have ejection seats, and that they have about that 50% chance modifier there to live. So, before getting to the boss, I shot down about 33 enemies that probably had pilots by my reasoning. And then that doesn't count Granga, the boss himself. Granga definitely dies, so I'm not counting him on that metric here. So 33, take half of that. We'll round up probably about 17 deaths, and then Granga, add onto that, 18. So, in Corneria, the first level, Fox has personally killed 18 people. Now, for the next level, I went into the Meteor Swarm, but this changes things a little bit, because we're not in atmosphere anymore. Now, I don't think that Andros really would have wasted time investing in, like, personalized escape pods for his soldiers, because it doesn't seem like Fox and company have those. So I'm going to say that when we're in space, that 50% chance of dying when you get shot down is probably a 100 more or less. Now, I know Slippy gets shot down in space at one point, but notably, his ship doesn't explode. He gets swatted and just sort of somehow goes into atmosphere into the planet's surface because his R-Wing is still intact. So, if you get blown up in space, I'm just going to say you die. So the 50% chance only applies in maps like Corneria. with that in mind, it just about doubles Fox's kill count in Meteo then, because even though the level starts with a lot of space debris, it opens up quite a bit with like a big onslaught of weird ships, like just weirdly shaped ones. But once again, just keeping my logic consistent, there's no reason that these aren't being piloted by people. Possibly more than one person. Once you factor in the boss at the end of the level, my count is that Fox kills about 38 people on Meteo, basically doubling his kill count from Corneria. So he's on to big things. Now I sort of dawdled on Fortuna, so this one will be interesting to count, but it's, from what I remember, mostly other ships. So there won't really be a lot of duds or arguable false positives in this. The only exception really is going to be that Starwolf survives canonically, because they have the same plot armor that the R-Wing pilots do. By my count, not including the Starwolf pilots, I shot down about 21 other ships. Rounded up, we're going to say Fox killed about 11 people here, so not as much as the other levels. Starwolf are sort of meant to be kind of the main event here, so there's just not as many mooks otherwise. Now, I tried Solar, but in my experience of it, generally, most of the enemies were like monsters and a lot of obstacles, like, you know, just, like I said, space debris, big rocks and lava and stuff. And also, I couldn't clutch the boss in one try, so I got salty and decided to quit. I decided to change course for Sector X instead. I kill a guy straight away in the cutscene, so that's counting. Space rules are back again, so every ship I shoot down here is just dead. Now, at the start of this level, guys are really just throwing themselves at you, so you can get up a pretty big body count really quickly. What's curious is that the strategy guide actually calls out some of these enemies in this level as being unmanned, which it doesn't do for a lot of the stationary enemies in other levels, so I almost want to go and reevaluate those ones as alive, but I don't feel like doing that. What's also interesting is that the boss for this level is definitely an AI piloting a big robot, and this is like the secret weapon that they were working on here, which implies to me that that is like rare. This is a new thing that Sector X specifically has. I'm too lazy though to bother recounting like the stationary turrets from the other levels though. By my reckoning, killing an AI does not count as killing a person, so I would say I got about 40 people total this mission. Now, like I said earlier, Slippy has fallen to Earth, or Titania, so we're going to go down there in the Landmaster to save him. This level is kind of interesting because there is a combination of monsters and like enemy ships here. These big things in particular looked very mechanical to me, but apparently they're like creatures according to the strategy guide. The strategy guide's also missing the big things on their back though, so I don't know what to make of that. What's interesting is that Peppy does acknowledge in this level that Slippy could just be dead, which makes me think that my guess of like a 50-50 chance is probably just about right. By the end of the level, factoring in all the other tanks and ships, I think I killed about 31 targets. The boss does not count, it's a creature, not a person. So I would say Fox's kill count goes up by 16 here. This leads us to the penultimate level at Bulce, I think is how you pronounce that. I actually defeated Starwolf earlier on, so they did not show up for me this time around, but I did dawdle quite a bit. I did not count the stationary targets as being manned or alive, so I didn't get anything for the beginning part of this level, but because I wasted so much time just fighting off these random fighter pilots in the latter half of the level, I ended up getting 49 kills total, and we're counting all of them since this is in space, no atmosphere. So that really shoots Fox's kill count up. He's doing great right now. Alright, with that out of the way, we can finally just about wrap this up with Venom, which is great, because I've always wanted to meet Tom Hardy. This one's going to be difficult to count, because of all the maps, this is probably the one I had to try the most on. I had to do a couple of attempts, so we're going to do the best we can here. This level throws waves of enemies at you, including this big mech thing. At least the strategy guide calls it a mech of some kind. So I'm going to count it as well to the kill count, even though its pilot never talks to you. Some enemies that don't really move much in the earlier parts of the game also are much more mobile here on Venom, so that kind of makes me want to reevaluate some things, but it's too late at this point in the video. I want to finish it. By the time I got the Goal Mech, I had 45 kills. I count him as 46, and then in the latter half of Venom, the only noteworthy enemy left is Andross himself. Now, since this franchise is stuck in remake hell, the best I can gather is that Star Fox Zero is more of a retelling or reimagining of Star Fox 64, rather than like a continuation or anything, which means that Star Fox Adventures and Star Fox Assault are where the series actually continues after Star Fox 64. Notably, Andross does not appear in either of them, and in fact, his shitty nephew takes over his empire in Star Fox Assault. So, I am pretty sure Andross is just straight up dead as of this level. Venom seems to have an atmosphere, so I'm going to go ahead and have my initial number of just ships shot down, add Andross and the Goal Mech on top of it. I count about 25 deaths overall in Venom. Taken all together, This gave me a kill count of about 197, just shy of 200. Supposedly, the deadliest pilot in history was Erich Hartmann, who fought for the Nazis in World War II, who downed 352 Allied planes. This means that Fox is probably not too far off from the deadliest pilot in history, if you given the fact that I'm being pretty conservative, right? There's a lot of enemy units I'm not counting that I would say probably have guys in them. And also, a much more skilled player than me on different maps could get a lot more kills racked up pretty easily. So Fox is one of the greats. All-time historic world murderer. Good job, Fox, and good job, team.
There are no innocent bystanders in hell. The war is chock full of them. Little kids, cripples, old ladies. In fact, except for a few of the brass, almost everybody involved is an innocent bystander.